Welcome and thank you for being here. I'm Dr. Jolene Church, CEO of DJC Coaching, Consulting, and Training. I'm also the founder of the Women's Leadership Support Network. I am absolutely thrilled to bring you this free leadership training series designed to empower and equip women around the world with the tools, confidence, and strategies to lead with impact. This series was born out of necessity. When the federal government eliminated women's leadership training programs, we knew we couldn't just stand by and let progress be erased. Instead, we took action. We created this space to ensure that leadership development remains accessible, because leadership isn't about privilege, it's about potential. Throughout this 12-part series, we'll cover key leadership topics, everything from overcoming bias and imposter syndrome to mastering executive presence and building a powerful leadership brand. But more than that, we're creating a movement, a network of women supporting women, lifting each other up and ensuring that no one has to rise alone. If you find this training valuable, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel and like this video so more women can discover and benefit from these resources. And if you're interested to bring this training into your organization, all of the training materials are available absolutely free of charge, because leadership development should be accessible to everyone. And at the end of this video, you'll find a QR code to join the Women's Leadership Support Network, a space where you can connect with mentors, ask questions, and find the support you need to keep moving forward. This is more than just leadership training. This is about changing the narrative, breaking barriers, and ensuring that the next generation of women leaders have the tools to thrive. You belong here. You are capable. You are meant to lead. Let's get started now. In leadership, how you say something often matters just as much as what you say. In this training, we'll explore how vocal presence, tone, and delivery affect credibility and influence, especially for women in leadership. We've designed this to help you lead with greater clarity, presence, and power, no matter your title, background, or experience. Whether you're someone who's been told you come on too strong or you've struggled to speak up in rooms where decisions are made, this session is for you. Communication is about more than just words. It's about presence, tone, timing, confidence. And it's about how people experience you. And for women in leadership, or those aspiring to lead, that experience is often shaped by dynamics that we didn't create, but still have to navigate. If you've ever been interrupted in a meeting, talked over or dismissed, or told to smile more, you already know this. Authority isn't always granted. Sometimes it has to be claimed, and that takes intention. So throughout this training, we'll explore what it means to command the room without conforming to outdated expectations. And we'll talk about the balance between clarity and connection, between assertion and listening, between speaking your truth and making your voice heard in ways that invite influence, not resistance. We'll also talk about what holds many women back from speaking up, negotiating with confidence, or stepping into that spotlight, and how we can shift that starting today. And to the male allies that are joining us, thank you. Your presence here matters, because creating equitable communication environments isn't just about women adjusting their style, it's about all of us paying attention to power, presence, and who gets heard. This session will offer practical tools for strengthening your leadership voice, verbally and non-verbally, while unpacking those societal patterns that shape how women are heard, perceived, and evaluated. Together, we'll dive into communication habits, strategies, and mindset shifts that can help you transform not just how you speak, but how you're received. By the end of this training, you'll understand how communication, verbal, nonverbal, and energetic, impacts perceptions of leadership, especially for women navigating bias and double standards. We'll identify common communication traps that undermine authority and influence, such as overexplaining, hedging, or softening strong messages. We'll learn evidence-based strategies to speak with confidence, clarity, and credibility, even in high-stakes or male-dominated environments. And we'll recognize how gender norms, socialization, and workplace culture influence communication styles, and how to lead with authenticity rather than adaptation. We'll also begin to develop or strengthen a personal communication presence that commands attention while fostering connection and trust. Our goal here is for you to leave this session not only with a stronger voice, but with a deeper understanding of how to use that voice to shape culture, build trust, and drive meaningful change. This is not about making your words count. It's about being heard, not just seen. It's about learning to lead the room, not waiting to be invited. As with each of our trainings, we're going to start with an opening reflection. Think back to a time when you walked into a room, a meeting, an interview, a presentation, and you immediately felt like you didn't belong. Maybe everyone looked more experienced, maybe you were the only woman, maybe the energy in the room made you question whether your voice would be heard or dismissed. Now ask yourself, how did you carry yourself in that moment? Did you shrink a little to take up less space? Did you second guess your words before speaking? Or did you step forward, even if your voice shook, and hold your ground? This training starts here with presence, not the performance of confidence, but the embodiment of it. Not the loudest voice, but the clearest tone. Presence is not about perfection. It's about intention. It's about how you walk into a room, how you carry your message, and how you own the space that you take up. As we begin, hold on to that past moment, not to critique yourself, but to recognize your growth, your power, and your capacity to command the room without changing who you are. Let's start with a truth that many women leaders know instinctively. You can say all the right words, but if your presence doesn't match your message, people won't remember what you said. Presence is more than posture. It's more than tone. It's more than dressing the part. Presence is the full body signal that says, I belong here. It's how you show up before you even speak. And while some people are told from a very young age that their voice matters, others have had to fight to be heard. Many women have learned to adapt their presence to survive in rooms that weren't built for them, to soften their delivery, to qualify their expertise, to apologize before offering an idea. This might be a silly question, but... And these habits don't form in a vacuum. They're responses to a world that all too often equates male confidence with competence and female confidence with arrogance. But here's the good news. Presence is not something you're born with, and it's something that you build over time. It starts with awareness. In leadership, presence creates perception, and perception shapes opportunity. Studies show that people make judgments about your competence, confidence, and credibility within seconds of meeting you. That's not really fair, but it is human. And while we can't always control how others perceive us, we can control how we present ourselves. Executive presence isn't about acting like someone else. It's about fully embodying who you are without apology. It's the ability to communicate clarity, calm, and conviction, even when the stakes are high. In high-pressure situations, presence can mean the difference between being heard and being ignored, between leading the room or being led by it. True presence is a mix of inner clarity and outer alignment. It shows up in 3 ways: physical, mental, and emotional. Let's start with physical presence. Start with our posture. Upright, grounded, open, not slouched, guarded, or shrinking. Then there's eye contact, direct, engaged, and responsive, not staring through people, but connecting. Our voice is steady, measured, and intentional, not rushed, whispered, or overly apologetic. And then there's movement, purposeful and controlled, not fidgety, frantic, or frozen. Our mental presence starts with focused attention, being fully engaged in the moment, not rehearsing your next line or scanning for approval. Self-awareness, knowing how your energy is affecting the room and how the room is affecting you. Reframing doubt, not eliminating nerves, but channeling them into focus. And then 3, emotional presence. There's grounded confidence, not the absence of fear, but the decision to show up anyway. Authenticity, leading with your real self, not a version of you molded to fit others' comfort zones. Warmth and credibility, not a forced smile, but a presence that communicates, I see you, and I stand in what I know. Think about someone that you've seen who commands a room without raising their voice. What makes their presence impactful? Now I'd like you to flip the mirror on yourself. How do you want others to feel when you walk in the room? What signals do you currently send with your body, tone, and energy? What's one small shift that you could make to align your presence with your leadership intent? Take a moment to think about these questions. Now let's look at structuring messages for impact, because again, it's not just what you say, it's how you structure it. And as leaders, we're constantly communicating, whether we're giving directions, setting expectations, or inspiring change. But how often do we pause to consider the architecture of our message? When communication lacks structure, it leads to confusion. When it's too long, people tune out. When it's vague, people fill in the gaps, often incorrectly. But when it's clear, focused, and well-structured, it lands. Great communicators don't just speak well, they build messages that are designed to connect, inform, and inspire action. And here's the good news. This isn't about being a naturally gifted speaker. It's about using a repeatable structure that helps your message stick, especially in high-stakes moments. So let's explore 2 simple but powerful tools that can help you structure your ideas so they're clear, compelling, and easy to remember. Now, this first one is something that I use all the time, whether I'm out training or delivering a keynote or a breakout session. The rule of 3. Why does this work? Because humans are wired to remember things in 3s. It's why so many of the most iconic phrases follow this rhythm, such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, stop, drop, and roll, friends, Roman countrymen. The rule of 3 creates rhythm, clarity, and memorability. It's especially helpful when you're giving updates, explaining strategy, or outlining a vision. So you can try this. Next time you speak in a meeting, organize your thoughts into 3 key points. For example, there are 3 things that I want to focus on today. 1, improving communication. 2, clarifying expectations. And 3, strengthening follow-through. That structure helps your audience track you, and it makes your message easier to repeat, which increases your influence. Next, let's look at the SCQA framework. SCQA stands for Situation, Complication, Question, and Answer. This is a tool used by leaders, consultants, and even TEDx speakers to shape messages that cut through the noise. So the situation, what's happening now? The complication, why does it matter? What's the tension or challenge? A question, what needs to be answered or addressed? And then the answer, what's the recommendation, insight, or path forward? So here's an example. We've seen a 15% drop in client retention this quarter. That's concerning because it's happening despite strong satisfaction scores, suggesting there's a disconnect between perception and loyalty. So the question I have for you is, what's causing the drop and how do we respond? One idea is to implement a post-engagement survey that targets repeat clients to better understand their decision-making process. So following that, this format is especially helpful when you need to communicate complex ideas, present recommendations, or influence decision makers. Let's look at how women in leadership have used message structure to shift perceptions, command attention, and drive action without needing to raise their volume to be heard. So here's the first example: boardroom clarity. So a director of community engagement shared how she used the rule of three to redirect a heated message. The group was spiraling into an unrelated issue when she calmly said, "Let's refocus. We need to decide, 1, are we aligned on the purpose of this initiative? 2, do we have the right stakeholders at the table? And 3, what does success look like for all involved?" The energy in the room immediately changed. People leaned in. The structure gave direction and reestablished her leadership without raising her voice. Next, we have a female analyst at a large tech company that was presenting to an all-male leadership team. In past meetings, her detailed reports often got buried in the noise, and so this time she led with clarity and structure. So she started out by saying, "Over the past 6 months, we've brought in more customers than ever before, but most of them aren't sticking around, and that's the problem. So the question is, why are we losing them? And what can we do about it? I recommend we pause new customer outreach and focus on improving the first 30 days of the customer experience." Now, her message was clear, direct, and solution focused. She didn't try to talk like the guys. She spoke with purpose, and her presence was undeniable. So now I'd like you to think about a situation where you struggled to get your message across. What was the message that you wanted the group to take away? And if you had used the rule of three or SCQA, how might that message have landed differently? One of the myths women often internalize is that we have to choose: be liked or be respected, be warm or be direct. But emotional intelligence, especially in communication, allows us to reject that false choice. We can lead with both empathy and authority. So here's the power of empathetic framing. Because empathetic framing means you acknowledge the emotional context of the situation before introducing data, decisions, or direction. This isn't soft, it's strategic. It calms nervous systems, builds trust, and opens minds. Let's say you're giving feedback to a team member who's been underperforming. An emotionally intelligent leader might say, "I know the last few weeks have been overwhelming with priority shifts. I also know you care deeply about your work. That's why I wanted to talk through what I've been noticing and how we can move forward together." Empathy doesn't always mean avoiding accountability. It means grounding it in humanity. The flip side is when women over-index on empathy and downplay their expertise. We buffer feedback, we hedge our points, we use just and I think and maybe, hoping to soften the blow. But here's the truth. Authority isn't in the volume of your voice, it's in your clarity. When you've done the emotional groundwork, you don't have to over-explain. So let's try to give you some examples of how you can shift. Instead of saying something like, "Sorry, I just think we should maybe reconsider this," say, "I'd like us to reconsider this approach, and here's why." Big difference, right? Empathy opens the door. Authority walks through it. Now I'd like you to ask yourself, where in your communication do you tend to soften or downplay your authority? What would it look like to frame with empathy, but own your message more clearly? Every leader, regardless of title or tenure, faces moments when conversations feel high stake. Whether it's giving tough feedback, addressing conflict, or setting boundaries with someone in power, difficult conversations are inevitable, but they don't have to be destructive. For women, these conversations often carry extra weight. We may worry about being labeled as too emotional, too direct, or not a team player. We may have learned to over-explain, over-apologize, or simply stay silent to keep the peace. But avoiding the conversation doesn't avoid the problem. It amplifies it. What we don't say becomes what we carry. A difficult conversation doesn't need to end in agreement. It needs to end in clarity. Instead of asking, how can I get them to agree with me? Ask, how can I express this clearly, respectfully, and in alignment with my values? When the goal is clarity over control, we shift from confrontation to connection. Let's name a myth that holds a lot of women back in leadership. The goal is to avoid conflict, but the real goal isn't to avoid it. It's to manage it with clarity and compassion. Conflict isn't a sign of dysfunction. It's a sign that something matters. And when approached with emotional intelligence, it becomes an opportunity for growth, connection, and trust. Emotionally intelligent leaders don't run from conflict. They regulate through it. They recognize when emotions are high, and they listen beyond the words. They stay rooted in purpose rather than pulled into power struggles. So how do you actually do that? Well, I'm going to introduce you to a practical tool to help you navigate difficult conversations with confidence and intention. It's called the CLEAR model. CLEAR stands for context, listen, empathize, assert, and resolve. So let's start with the first C, context. Start by setting the stage. What is the purpose of the conversation? What do you hope to achieve? So here's an example. I'd like to talk about what happened in yesterday's meeting so we can find a better way to move forward. Next, we're going to move on to listen. Create space for the other person to share. Practice active listening without interrupting or planning your rebuttal. Here's an example. Can you help me understand how you saw the situation? Next, empathize. Acknowledge their experience or perspective, even if you disagree. This doesn't mean that you're conceding, it means you're connecting. So our example would be, I can see how that would be frustrating. Thanks for sharing that with me. Next, assert. Clearly and respectfully state your own needs, boundaries, or perspective. Don't minimize or water it down. So an example of that, what didn't sit right with me was the tone. It felt dismissive, and I want to make sure we can have a respectful dialogue. And then finally, we move to resolve. Collaboratively explore what comes next. What does resolution look like? What commitments can each of you make? So here's the final example. How do we want to handle this if something similar comes up again? This model is powerful because it helps keep you grounded. It helps keep you focused on connection, not control. And most importantly, it gives you a repeatable process for having hard conversations without losing yourself in them. And I've made a handout of this in a PDF version available in the show notes. Sometimes even the most well-structured approach can go off course when strong emotions take over. This is called an emotional hijack, when the brain's amygdala, our threat detector, overrides our logic and launches us into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. For women, these moments can be especially tricky. You might freeze up just so that you can avoid being labeled as too emotional. Or you might fawn, which means you'll over-apologize or backtrack or even abandon your point altogether just to smooth things over. But emotionally intelligent leaders recognize these hijack moments as signals, not failures. They pause, breathe, they recenter, and then they choose their next step with intention, not impulse. That's why practicing the CLEAR model in low-stakes situations matters, because it helps build muscle memory so that when the pressure is on, you can still access your tools instead of defaulting into reactivity. Let's look at a few examples of emotionally intelligent language that you can use in moments of tension. So in scenario 1, you feel dismissed in a meeting. And so we say something along the lines of, I want to pause for a moment because I don't feel like my point was acknowledged. Let me restate it clearly so we can be on the same page. Next, you receive defensive feedback. So the conversation sounds something like this. I can tell this is hitting a nerve, and I want to understand where you're coming from. Let's take a breath and come back to this with a shared goal. And in our final scenario here, you're holding someone accountable. So that conversation sounds like this. I respect your contributions, and I also need to be direct. What happened didn't align with our values, and I want to work with you to address it. Now, all three of these statements don't avoid conflict. They lean into it with clarity and care. They model how to hold boundaries without burning bridges. So now I'd like you to take a moment to think of a difficult conversation that you've been avoiding, or even one that didn't go the way that you happened that's already taken place. If it's happened, what emotions were present for you? How might the clear model have shifted that dynamic? And what would it look like to revisit or reframe the conversation with emotional intelligence at the center? In every leadership journey, there are moments that define how we show up and how we choose to use our voice. I'm going to share a few stories that remind us that power in communication doesn't always come from volume. Sometimes it's the quiet conviction, the calm clarity, or the unapologetic truth that leaves the most lasting impact. Let's explore 2 stories from female leaders who choose their own voice, even in the face of challenge or bias. We're going to start with Erin Hyder. She's the Assistant City Manager of the City of Durango, Colorado. And her story tells us that leadership isn't about having the loudest voice in the room. It's about knowing when to listen. Erin has built her leadership career not by dominating conversations, but by shaping them through presence, intention, and humility. As the Assistant City Manager for Durango, Erin doesn't try to command attention through performance. She leads by making space, by ensuring that others feel heard, valued, and invited to contribute. That might sound simple, but in environments where leadership is often mistaken for control or constant direction, Erin's approach challenges the norm. In my conversation with her, Erin shared that she doesn't feel the need to fill every bit of silence or have every answer. In fact, she's found that some of the most powerful leadership moments comes when she steps back so that others can step forward. She puts it this way: I'm in this position not because I talk the most, but because I make space for others to be heard. Now, that mindset isn't passive. It's profoundly intentional. It reflects an emotionally intelligent leader who recognizes that influence isn't about spotlighting yourself. It's about creating an environment where great ideas can surface and diverse voices can shape the path forward. Erin's story is a reminder that presence doesn't always look like command. It often looks like calm, clear, and quiet confidence. It's a model of leadership that's collaborative, not performative. One that trusts in the power of facilitation over force, and one that Erin shows us how to lead by amplifying the room, not owning it.
I think being able to connect with women and create a not a bond, but a definitely like a support, like partnership. To me, and what I see here in the city of Durango, because we do have so many women leaders, is that has organically happened. And I think we loosely, like, it's not formalized, it's informal, but I feel that we all rely on that a lot, that we have partners that we can bounce things off, like the things that we are filtering through that may be different than our male counterparts. And then we as a team, right? You always have another partner or somebody to bounce something off of, and then we're collectively working together to like work through the things maybe that we're experiencing that are different. And I see that with our other lady directors that we have on our team.
I'd like you to think of a time that you created space for someone else's voice to be heard. How did that shape the outcome of the conversation or even that relationship? Our next leadership spotlight is Shelly Bellm. Leadership isn't just tested in boardrooms or big presentations. It's tested in the small, sharp moments where bias, doubt, and dismissal show up unexpectedly. Shelly Bellm knows this firsthand, and while serving on the Minturn Town Council, Shelly was the only elected woman among 7 council members. Partway through her term, a new male member was appointed to fill an open seat, and it wasn't long before he made his opinion clear. He told Shelly she didn't belong there, that she should go home, that her place was with her family, not at the leadership table. In that moment, Shelly could have shrunk back. She could have argued emotionally, or she could have stayed silent, but instead she led with emotional intelligence. She stayed grounded, she stayed composed, and she communicated her authority with clarity and conviction. Here's her response. I was overwhelmingly elected by the community to represent them, and I am here because they entrusted me with that responsibility. Your opinion does not change that. There was no shouting, there was no defensiveness, just calm, grounded leadership. Shelly's story reminds us that authority isn't about volume, it's about presence. It's about knowing the strength of your own voice, especially when someone tries to diminish it. It's about standing in your power without needing to explain, apologize, or soften your right to be there. In that moment, Shelly wasn't just defending herself, she was modeling a new kind of leadership. Leadership that communicates from strength, not fear. Leadership that faces bias with composure, not retaliation. Leadership that invites others to reconsider what true authority looks like. When women lead with emotional intelligence, especially in the face of bias, they don't just change the moment, they change the culture. And it starts, just like Shelly showed us, with one calm, clear, unwavering voice. So now let's have you think about this situation and think about, have you ever been in a situation where you've had to defend your role or expertise? What would it look like to respond not with anger, but with calm, confident clarity? And now it's time for our first male ally spotlight, my friend Antoni Tzavelas. He's an emotional intelligence trainer and a tech industry advocate. His story shows us that true leadership isn't just technical, it's human. Now, Antoni didn't take a traditional path into leadership. He began his career in fashion, a world built on creativity, emotion, and connection. When he transitioned into tech, he quickly noticed something was missing, and that was emotional intelligence. These spaces are mostly focused on logic and productivity and performance, and he saw how often human connection just got pushed aside. He also saw the cost of that: miscommunication, disengaged teams, and missed opportunities for innovation. That realization changed the course of his career. And so today, Antoni trains engineers, developers, and tech leaders on a different kind of skill set, one that centers on self-awareness, empathy, and communication. In my interview with Antoni, he said, we spend a lot of time thinking we make rational decisions, when really it's our gut that decides. It's whether it feels right. And that emotional side of decision making, it's not being taught, and it needs to be. And I could not agree with him more. In a world increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence, Antoni reminds us of what makes us most human. He speaks openly about the gaps in leadership development, especially for women. When emotional intelligence is dismissed as just optional, he challenges that idea, not with blame, but with invitation. He says, we're so deep into tech that we've forgotten why we work. He says, because of the people. Antoni's approach to leadership is grounded, generous, and real. He doesn't just support women's leadership, he models inclusive leadership himself. His presence shows that emotional intelligence is not a soft skill, it's a core competency. One that allows all of us, regardless of gender, to lead with greater clarity, compassion, and impact. Antoni's story is a call to rehumanize our workplaces, and it starts with choosing connection over control, empathy over ego, and curiosity over certainty. Because when leaders lead like that, everyone else rises.
It's your competitive advantage in life to understand your emotions and how they affect yourself and others to best get through your work life and your home life in general. So without it, I think that you're doing yourself a disservice. So taking the time to understand your emotions and how they play a huge factor in whatever it is that you do, that is what will give you the advantage over anyone else. And leaning into that, that's the winning strategy to life.
Our next male ally is another friend of mine, Ron Higgs, and he's a veteran, a tech leader, and a leadership coach. His story shows us that leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. Now, Ron spent years leading in high-pressure environments from military aviation to defense and tech industries. In those spaces, authority was often measured by decisiveness, command, and confidence. But Ron noticed something else. The people who got the most airtime weren't always the ones with the best ideas. He saw firsthand how volume and dominance often drowned out collaboration, and he realized if he wanted to be the kind of leader who built trust, not just compliance, something had to change. So he did what many won't. He leaned into emotional intelligence, and Ron began paying attention not just to outcomes, but to energy. He started listening more than he spoke. He learned to regulate his own reactions, to ask better questions, to tune into the signals others were sending, both spoken and unspoken. He told me in our interview, we've built systems where the loudest person gets the credit. But the best leaders, they listen, they create space. Ron's evolution wasn't about becoming softer. It was about becoming stronger through self-awareness. He began mentoring other men in leadership and women as well, especially in technical fields, on how emotional intelligence isn't a liability, it's leverage. He talks openly about how emotional intelligence transformed his leadership and helped him connect across gender, race, and positional lines. Not by pretending to have all the answers, but by leading with humility, presence, and intention. Ron's story reminds us that leadership is not about asserting control, it's about inspiring trust. And in a world where too many people are talked over or tuned out, Ron models a different way forward, one where power doesn't have to be loud, where influence begins with listening, and where men can be powerful allies, not by speaking for women, but by making room for everyone's voice to be heard. So having heard some wonderful stories about both female leaders and male leaders, I'd like to take a moment here, and for the women in the group, let's think of a male colleague, a mentor, or a leader who models emotional intelligence in how he leads or communicates. What specific actions or behaviors stand out to you? And how might you integrate more of that grounded presence into your own leadership or support others doing the same? And then for our male leaders, Reflect on a time when you led with emotional intelligence by listening deeply, staying composed, and showing empathy. What impact did it have? How can you continue to model and normalize that presence for others around you? Now let's take a global perspective on commanding the room. Communication is never just about words. It's shaped by culture, norms, expectations, and power. And nowhere is this more evident than in how authority and influence are expressed and interpreted around the world. As women step into leadership globally, understanding cultural nuance is key, not just for being heard, but for navigating influence without losing authenticity. So let's explore a few contrasts, and we're going to start with Japan, known for indirectness as respect. In many Japanese professional environments, communication is high context, indirect, and deeply respectful of hierarchy and harmony. Assertiveness, especially for women, can be misread as aggressive. Leaders in Japan may lean on subtlety, silence, and implied meaning to preserve group cohesion. Influence comes from behind the scenes rather than the spotlight. So in cross-cultural communication, directness doesn't always equal effectiveness. Listening closely and building trust slowly may carry more weight than immediate clarity. Next, let's look at Germany, known for their directness and clarity. German business culture values precision, directness, and logic. Emotional expressiveness is often toned down in favor of competence and structure. Women leaders who speak assertively are more likely to be seen as strong, but they still face stereotypes around likability. Influence here is earned through clarity, preparedness, and command of facts, not charisma. So it's important in this environment to know your audience. What may be considered too bold in one culture might be expected in another. And then finally, let's look at Latin America, where hierarchy and warmth is their style. So in many Latin American countries, leadership is shaped by formality and warmth. Personal relationships matter deeply, and deference to hierarchy is common. For women, navigating assertiveness often means balancing respect with clear boundaries. Relational leadership is powerful, but leaders must also assert their role, especially in male-dominated industries. In this case, tone, body language, and titles carry weight. Communicating authority may require more relational groundwork. So I'd like you to think about your own cultural lens. How were you taught to express disagreement or assert authority? Have you ever had to adjust your communication style in a cross-cultural or multi-generational context? And what's one thing that you've learned about influence, maybe from another culture? Let's review the key takeaways from this training. First, authority is not about volume, it's about presence. How you deliver your message, your tone, pacing, body language, shapes how others perceive your confidence and credibility. Second, structure strengthens influence. Using tools like the rule of threes or the clear model help you structure your communication for clarity and impact. 3, difficult conversations require emotional intelligence. So confidence in conflict isn't about being louder, it's about staying grounded. Again, the clear model, context, listen, empathize, assert, resolve, offers a roadmap for turning tension into trust. Number 4, communication is shaped by bias, and that includes our own. Women are often judged more harshly on tone, word choice, and assertiveness. Recognizing these dynamics helps us navigate them more strategically and helps male allies show up more effectively. Powerful communication isn't performative, it's intentional. When you align your words, voice, and presence with your values, you create messages that stick and leadership that inspires. So now that you have listened to this training, what is one communication habit that you would like to improve? It might be how you start a conversation, how you express disagreement, or how you advocate for yourself or others. Maybe how you respond when tensions rise. Don't overthink it. Just name one habit that you'd like to shift, because awareness is the first step towards change. In this training, I am bringing you a journal prompt. And I believe this is important for us to take what we're learning and be able to really think through how we might do something differently. That intentionality based on a past experience that didn't go so great, what we might do based on the learning that was provided here so that we can plan out next time. All right, so I'm going to have you think of a recent conversation where you didn't feel fully heard or as influential as you wanted to be. If you'd like, you can take a screenshot of this journal prompt so that you can take this exercise and really give it the due diligence and time that it deserves. So in thinking of that conversation, what was said and what wasn't? How did your tone, your body language, or your phrasing affect the outcome? And what might you do differently next time to command the room without losing authenticity? You can think through this using the CLEAR framework. Remember, context, listen, empathize, assert, and resolve. And then you can just rewrite how you would approach that conversation now with greater presence, clarity, and confidence. Here is your call to action. This week, choose one strategy or habit from this training to put into practice. Maybe it's something like replacing, I just wanted to say, with something more direct. Maybe you'd like to pause and ground yourself before entering a high-stakes meeting. How about using the rule of threes to structure and organize your thoughts? Or practicing the CLEAR model in a conversation that you've been avoiding. Write down your action, set a reminder, check in with yourself at the end of the week. And in that check-in, ask yourself, did it feel different? What changed in how others respond or how you felt? Commanding the room doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. And that starts with one intentional choice at a time. Thank you so much for spending time with me today and investing in your growth as a leader. If this training helped you in the reflection, maybe gain insight or build new skills, I invite you to do two things. First, subscribe to the YouTube channel because every 2 weeks I release new trainings, tools, and strategies designed to support your leadership journey. Whether you're leading a team, a project, or simply stepping more fully into your voice, this is for you. Second, join the Women's Leadership Support Network. If you're looking for real community, not just content, this is your invitation. We have two groups. Our private Inner Circle group on LinkedIn is for women leaders like you, sharing wisdom, asking big questions, and building leadership that's bold, inclusive, and grounded in purpose. But for the men joining us, again, thank you, and we welcome you to our public LinkedIn group. The QR code on the screen is going to take you directly there. Here, we're going to work side by side to change what leadership looks like and sounds like for everyone. Because leadership is not a solo journey. Let's keep this conversation going. And I look forward to sharing more with you in our next training titled Confidence and Overcoming Imposter Syndrome. So together, let's grow because together we rise.